So I'm going to let you know in advance that YouTube has been, making changes to improve the live experience for people. And that one of that those things is that there is going to be a 60-second kind of delay between your comments. Okay. And it's one of those things where they're trying to reduce spam accounts, just like posting or just annoying people who are just posting. Okay. So there's going to be a 60-second sort of delay between your comments. So if you have like kind of like a long comment, make sure you get it all in one. All right. To make sure I get your full question or what have you. So welcome. I haven't done a live in a minute here on YouTube. Um, but I did want to check in with y'all before the end of the year, let you know what's going on with the channel now and in the coming new year because there's going to be a lot of changes. And also, I have a little lecture because, as I've been teaching my fashion design class on Patreon, I see these kind of issues come up all the time. And I want to address those things with you kind of preemptively. All right. So, first of all, this coming July 2025, is going to be my 10-year anniversary on YouTube. I know that's bananas. 10 years. And so it's time to make some changes to my overall business and everything. One of the things that happened is I wrote a book this year. I don't know if you know. I wrote a book this year. It's called Fashion Design and a Fashion School in a Book. And I wrote a workbook that goes along with it, Fashion School in a Book Design Journal. And I'm going to mention this because I keep getting this kind of question a lot. There are ebook versions of both the book and design journal. People are like, do you ship here? Do you ship there? And honestly, it depends on what website you use to buy the books. Whether you use my publisher, whether you use Amazon, whether Amazon is available in your country, like that sort of thing. So that depends on where you're shipping from or where you're buying from. But if you're worried, get the ebook. Okay. If you buy from my publisher, rockynook.com, and all these links are going to be in the links, like in the video description of the chat. Eh, It's called rockynook.com. All right. And you know what? I'm just gonna open it now. And where are we? This is my author page on rockynook.com. And you can go there. And the thing about buying at my publisher, number one, is when you order the ebook, you get a couple of different file formats. You get a Kindle format, you get an older format, and then you get a PDF. So you can read it on your desktop, your laptop, whatever. Okay. The second reason is if you want to buy the ebook and the print book, they have a really nice bundle price. Boom. But of course, you can get them on Amazon. You can get them. My book is available at the Harvard bookstore. That's going to be the closest I ever get to Ivy League. But you can get my book at the Harvard bookstore, Target, Barnes and Noble. It's everywhere. Okay. So that's the update on the book. And I know a lot of you have bought the book already. And I cannot thank you enough to all the people who already purchased the book. But the thing that happened when I wrote the book was I had the time of my life. I had the time of my life. And seriously, and I've been saying this to anybody who will take 1 second to talk to me. All I want to do now is sit in a castle in Scotland and write books. And I chose Scotland because uh it's the weather is nice. It's cold. And the people there are so nice. Like I was there for a few days a couple years ago and literally Everyone is so nice. Just out of all the places I've been to, I've never met a nicer people. Like, they're not in your face, but if you're standing on the street corner and you're kind of looking around, someone will stop and ask if you're lost. And if you're standing at the bottom of a stairwell because there's no elevator with a bunch of heavy bags because you're stupid and you didn't realize it didn't have an elevator, someone will help you. Like, it's just everybody's so nice. Okay. Anyway, like, I lost a 5 pound note. Like, it was in my hand and the wind just took it. And this guy, I was running after it, and this guy ran with me to pick it up. And I was like, oh, snap. Is he going to take my money? No, he picked it up for me. He wanted to make sure I had it. I'm like, oh, dang, thanks. Anyway, Scotch people are nice. But no, but seriously, uh, I just want to write books for the rest of my life. And I'm thinking about either writing a pattern making book or a color theory specifically for fashion. Okay. And I posted a poll on my YouTube community page. So if you haven't voted in that poll, please go do so. And here are my thoughts. Okay. Number one, there are no good color books for fashion design. There's a lot of good color books for graphic design, for fine artists, paint mixing, nothing really for fashion. The color books available for fashion, it's a lot of marketing, advertising, which is more hand in hand with graphic design, or they just have lots of color stories that you can, choose from and use. Okay. There was a color theory book that I used, a textbook I used when I was teaching at university, but for some reason, that book is 117 years old dollars now. Why is it $117 US dollars? 117 US dollars for a color theory book? I don't know. I don't know. But somebody emailed me and was like, "Hey, Zoe, I know you recommend this book, but I can't afford it. Can you think of some can you recommend anything else?" And I looked and I'm like, "Yeah, $117 is bananas." And so I started buying a bunch of color books to see what was out there, what I could recommend to students. And there really isn't anything where I'm like, yeah, this is the one. And I do go over color theory in fashion school in a book, but this would be more fleshed out, more deep divey, more intricate, and have like a lot of color exercises to get your knowledge to color theory. And people think that they don't need to understand color. Like, it's just a matter of like, oh, let's just put some colors together and see what happens. But here's the thing, when you understand color theory, you reduce your trial and error time a lot. Okay. If you don't know what you're doing with color and you're just like kind of putting swatches together and you're like, what do you think? What do you think? I don't know. What do you think? No, you know, like, how some things go together, how some things don't. If you want to add another color, you already have a short list of things that you think are going to be good options for the kind of effect you want. Whether you want to add things because you need a pop, whether you want to add things because you want to make everything look more harmonious. Like, you learn these things when you learn color theory. So when you're putting colors together for a single outfit, a whole collection, whatever, it's that knowledge that helps you, and also to know. Okay, I had an exclusive lecture for my early readers group where people who bought my book the first week were invited to a private exclusive lecture. And I talked about looking at your work objectively. And part of that is knowing when something is good. It's not always about trashing your own stuff, but it's about acknowledging when it actually is good. And then also acknowledging what needs improvement. And somebody was like, how do you do that? It's like knowledge and practice. Like, you have to learn things and you have to apply them and learn to critique. And so color theory is one of those things where you can really directly apply the knowledge of color theory and design principles into your work to help you understand proportion, color, tone, texture, like all these things. So that's color theory. And it's a subject that I love dearly and would love to write a book about, quite frankly. And then there's pattern making. And so for the past couple of years, I have been doing a pattern making class on my Patreon. And, because like I've done a ton of pattern making, but that's the first time I taught pattern making. And so I started looking at all these books to see how they're giving the step-by-step instruction, because doing a thing and teaching a thing are really different. So I was like looking at all these books, and I would refer to these books to kind of do like a step-by-step breakdown. And a lot of them are not great. Okay. And not that they're not good pattern makers. The thing is, they are not good at giving instruction. That's a completely different thing. And let me just toot my own horn. My thing is giving instruction. Like that's what I'm best at, is how to explain something to someone else where it makes sense. And I think that, and actually one of my girlfriends was like, and she works in fashion also, and she was like, I was telling her I wanted to write this color theory book, and she's like, girl, write a pattern making book. I need one for my students, for my sanity. Like I need a pattern making book. And she was showing me like a bunch of the books that she had, because she teaches a program. And she's like, I don't like none of this. I don't like none of this. And so I was like, what do y'all think? Do I need to write a pattern making book? Like, do you find instructions in most pattern making books frustrating? Because it's not like I would be developing new styles. I would be doing stuff like, bodice block, jacket block, pant block, and but also, explaining things in my particular way with sketches, with photographs, with written instruction. Um, and of course, like here are some different collars you can draft, and Peter Pan collar, two-piece collar. So it's not like I'm gonna come up with new styles, fancy stuff, but it's gonna be the basics of pattern making, but it's like the way I tend to explain things. Is that something you all need? Okay, so drop your comment, go vote in the poll, leave comments on the poll so I can read them, and like think about that as I plan, because I will be working on a new book in the new year. Okay, let me just read these comments real quick. Right. The books are not, I mean, and that's why we have pattern making teachers, because the books, there's a lot more to learning than just the books. Okay. I don't want to feel like I'm not crediting teachers. I know that teachers are good and they go above and beyond the pattern making books, but I always come from a perspective of, what if they're not in school? I'm not pro or anti fashion school. Okay. It depends on your goals. It depends on where you are in life and what you have access to, all these different variables. Okay. And if you can go to fashion school, great. But if you can't, you can't. And so when I write my books, I always think of, what if they don't have access to fashion school? That's how I always think of things. And so that's why my way of explaining things are different, I think, than other people's. So that's what's going on with that. So go on, and here's the thing. You have to buy this book so that my publisher thinks that I can sell books, and that so they give me a contract where it's like I don't have a separate contract. You hear about these celebrities where they're all like, "Oh, I have a 3-book deal, blah blah." No, I have a contract for fashion school and a book. I have a contract for a design journal, and that's it. I don't have like a multi-book deal. So if this book doesn't sell, then I have to go pursue another publisher. I actually like this publisher a lot. She's very nice. So yeah, my publishing team and my editor, my marketing director, they're all really great. The three that I've worked with. And so yeah, I would like to stay here and sell a lot of books with them if I can. Please go buy my book. I like that you don't assume that people always know what's being referred to. Yeah, I assume people don't know what I'm talking about. So I just kind of like, and if you're more advanced and you don't like that I'm laying more groundwork, that's fine. But I just always assume people don't know what I'm talking about. So there's that. Now, if you want to support the book, but you don't have the money to buy the book, something you can do, there's a couple of things. Number one, go request it at your local library. Okay. And if they get enough of these requests, they will try to get the book for their library. And that way you have access to it for free. And my publisher is like, hey, all these libraries are asking for your book. I guess it's popular. It's a win-win. You might want to wait until February because that's when the print version comes out. But and I'll ask people again. So you can ask your local library if they will carry it. Number two, you can tell other people, you can ask other people to buy it for you for the holidays. I know that it's not just Christmas, but there's a lot of even if you don't celebrate Christmas for religious reasons, a lot of people are buying gifts for each other end of year. Some people find New Year's to be the more gift giving holiday, depends on your culture. But holiday gift giving season is upon us. You can put it on your gift list, ask people to buy it for you, or you can share links to my book with other people that you think would help. Be like, hey, maybe you should buy this book because even if you don't learn anything, it's going to be funny. That's the feedback I got from a lot of people was that it's funny. Because the book, it's just me talking and I write like I talk. So would love to have a book that doesn't require in-person instruction because I can take a class, but will need to re-reference the material constantly. Yeah, exactly. So that's the goal. If I write a pattern making book, and this whole past, couple years I've been doing pattern making on Patreon has really prepared me for this. This will give me a handy dandy excuse, okay, to buy a fancy Alvanon dress form. That's what I'm telling myself. I found one on eBay. It's a used one from 2010, but it's like the pictures are immaculate. There's like 20 pictures. And because Alvanon forms are the best forms. And somebody asked me the other day why. Number one, because Alvanon forms are shaped more like humans than any other dress form currently on the market, with like kind of like the tummy bumps and the way things are positioned and shaped. Number two, it's like the quality of the dress form. It's like that right combination of firm and soft. You don't want something too squishy because then it can't handle like you pushing on it when you're draping, when you're fitting. You don't want it too malleable because humans aren't malleable like that. But at the same time, you don't want something too stiff because then it's hard to pin. I like my PGM form. It has served me really well. It was inexpensive. Um, but I don't think it has enough cushioning. And sometimes it makes things a little bit hard to pin. But when I bought that, I already had a lot of experience working with dress forms and pinning things. And so it didn't bother me that much. But I could see why beginners wouldn't love it as much. But I would get a bifurcated form. That's the one with legs and not just the torso, so that I can draft pants also. So yeah. If you are also looking for an Alvanon, I recommend eBay. That's where I'm getting mine. Please don't get the one that I want to get. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is Spotify because it's related to my YouTube channel. And I've had comments over the years of people asking me to post my videos audio only on on Spotify or any podcasting platform so that they can listen to just the audio of my videos, when they're going to work, when they're on the train, when they're commuting, when they're cleaning their house, when they're drawing, without needing the massive Wi-Fi connection needed to play videos, because that's also a big battery suck also. And so I looked into it, and so I have created my Spotify profile, and I have uploaded one audio as a test. So if this is something you're interested in, if you're one of the people who are like, yeah, I just need Zoe talking at me to remind me to go back to work, to do my thing, here it is. Here it is. I put the link in the description of this live. Let me just drop it in the chat also. Okay. So that's my Spotify. I just have the one right now, just as a test. I'm hoping that you will all leave me comments saying sound is fine, sound is good, I can hear you, I'm glad you're doing this, please keep going, or whatever. I want to listen to some of the feedback before I go full hog on it. But yeah, according to popular request. I know better forms make custom forms, but they are on the pricier side. Alvanon. Okay. Where and how can I get a body form that is my body, which is big and tall, 6'2" at 350? You can look for a men's plus dress form. They're more rare, but they exist. So let me know in the comments if you are interested in the Spotify. You can also just go on Spotify and Google Zoe Hong, Zoehong. My name is spelled with 7 whole letters. There is no Y at the end of my name. I love you. Please stop misspelling my name. It's only 3 letters. Okay. So just go to Spotify and look up Zoe Hong and you'll find me. You'll either find me or you will find, I double checked this. You'll find interviews where I was the guest on somebody else's podcast. So you'll see those episodes. You'll see my podcast, hopefully. So that's going to be on Spotify, and I'm going to be stripping my videos down to their audio, cleaning it up some, posting them to Spotify, and hopefully I'll get to a point where I can create new content just for the Spotify. But, I have a lot of videos to go through. Okay. So that's that. And next, I want to talk to you about Patreon because I'm making a lot of changes over there. Okay. So, Patreon, as of the end of this year, I'm going to stop making new lessons on Patreon. Now, my Patreon subscribers, they already know all of this, but this is now for the public domain. So by the end of the year, which is we only have 2 weeks left. Today's Sunday, literally two and a half. I'm going to stop making new lessons. And that means I'm moving all my lessons into the archives. So right now I have a $7 tier, $7 a month tier, where it's just access to monthly meetups. My meetup is actually later today. So once a month, we get together on Zoom and we talk for 1 to 2 hours. We do Q&A. We talk about fashion. We talk about the Met Gala. We talk about the shows. We talk about big fashion news. And people ask me their individual questions about their own businesses. I'm moving all of my lessons into my $7 tier. And it's soon going to be called, at the beginning of the year, I'm going to change it to meetups and archives. And so when you join at that $7 tier, you're going to have access to all my classes and you're going to have access to the monthly meetups. And so that's what I'll be doing on Patreon in 2025. I'll be doing the monthly meetups. I'll be hosting the archives. I will be answering questions, but not grading homework. So if you always wanted to take a poke around my Patreon, but couldn't afford it before, the new year will be the time for you to do that. Okay. Next topic. Okay, speaking of Patreon, I want to tell you a few things that I learned from teaching Patreon, which I think will be useful to you. And that's the topic of today's live, which is the difference between a muse and a customer. And this is something we do early on in the fashion design class. And there's a lot of confusion around it with some people. A muse is not a customer. Okay. They can be, but they are not always. Okay. I want you to think about Rihanna's underwear line. Okay. So Rihanna is the muse. You know, she doesn't sit there and do flat sketches of all the designs. She has teams coming up with the ideas, but their muse is Rihanna. They want to emulate that BDE, that sass, that boldness, that sexiness. Rihanna is absolutely the muse for that line. However, do you think Rihanna wears that line, or she would wear that line if it wasn't about her, if she didn't own it? She is most likely wearing Asian provocateur, expensive French lines we haven't even heard of. You know, I'm not an intimates expert, so I don't know all the big fancy brands, but she's wearing the big fancy brands. She's getting things custom made. She's having things sent to her. And I will bet you US dollars that if that wasn't her brand, she would not wear something that price point, that cheaply made, all those things. Not to not to put down her brand, not to put down her brand, but that's not what she's wearing. She's going out to events in haute couture. And so she's not wearing $6 panties. She's wearing them because it's her brand. And, if anybody asks and blah, 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 and she probably wants to test product also. But she's not their customer. Okay. The Savage, Rihanna's underwear brand, their customer are people who admire Rihanna, who want that style, that bold, sexy, colorful style. They want to be kind of like involved in that lifestyle a little bit, borrow a little bit of that glamour because they love her. But that's the customer, and Rihanna is the muse. Do you see how they're different? And that's something you need to think about when you are designing. Just because you are inspired by someone doesn't mean they're your customer. Okay. Another example, if you are familiar with my Badass Asian Grandma project, okay, the story is I was driving somewhere early in the morning and I saw this grandma, just like this tiny, like 4'11" Asian grandma, gray hair. She was wearing these like floral print pantaloons and a shiny black puffy parka that really looked like tires stacked on top of each other. And she was pedaling down the street as fast as she can in this like neon huffy bike that she clearly got from her grandson or something. Like she borrowed it from her grandson, like it was a kid's bike. Okay. And I found that whole image incredibly captivating. I just loved it so much. And so she was my inspiration for a project. But if you look at the resulting designs, that's not the customer. The customer, like that grandma, would never buy my clothes because she is thrifting. She is, stealing stuff from her kids. She's wearing stuff that she's had for 20 years. You know that, like that stereotypical Asian grandma. She collects cans on the street. She does morning Tai Chi by Lake Merritt, like all that stuff, right? So she's not my customer. She's not buying my stuff. She's not shopping in new boutiques. She's not looking for fun, colorful cocktail dress. No, but she's my inspiration. Okay. And I want you to be able to discern the difference when you're working on your design projects. It's very important. So I encourage you to have inspiration images and inspiration people. And that can be complete strangers. I didn't take a picture because number one, I don't like randomly taking photos of strangers. And number two, I was driving. And so you can have but I did look up images on the internet that kind of remind me of that aesthetic. And so that was part of my mood board. and images that kind of went along with that was part of my mood board. But my customer was different. And I had a different set of images that described my customer, a customer who would find fun, interesting combinations, unconventional color combinations, but like in very comfortable shapes because they don't like being uncomfortable. That's me. Like, I don't do uncomfortable anymore. Like, I have, I think, 3 pairs of heels left in my entire shoe closet. One of them are my wedding shoes because that's just sentimental. I have 1 pair of black stilettos, just like emergency rainy day black stilettos, fashion emergency. So there, I have the customer profile and then I have the muse. Okay. And I want you to think about them differently, even if it means having different cork boards or different Pinterest boards to kind of differentiate between the two. Okay. So that's the difference between muse and customer. And if you have questions about that, drop them in the chat now. But that's what's going on with my Patreon. Another thing that is going on with my Patreon fashion students that I would like to address to you is this idea of working on a project for a super, super long time, like extended period of time, and then not knowing what to do with your original inspiration. I've had circumstances where, the whole point of the Patreon is you can work at your own pace. And so some people, they'll like establish their inspiration and their color story and their fabrics, and then they'll kind of disappear for a while and they'll come back and they're looking at their project again and they're like, I don't like this anymore. Or, they'll have their inspiration images and then they'll have done their sketchbook concept exploration and they'll have done their color story. And while they were doing their color story, they look back and they're like, oh, that color story doesn't match up with my original inspiration images. Does that mean I have to get rid of all of my inspiration images? No, you don't have to do that. Okay. So here's the thing is number one is preventive. Don't do that. Don't wait so long and go so long without working on your project because first of all, that's not the way fashion moves, and it's ingrained in us that fashion moves fast. And so for the most part, your inspiration is fleeting. Your inspiration is of the moment and you're like, this is what I'm feeling inspired by right now. And once it's gone, it's gone. And I speak from experience. This is how I often feel about inspiration. And so if you go months without touching your project, looking at your project, and you don't even know what happened before, I mean, number one, I did develop Design Journal for that in mind because it keeps you organized. It has like prompts and worksheets for every step of the design process along the way. So all you have to do is fill out the book. And then if you come back to it later on, you can just open the book and be like, oh, yeah, this is where I left off. So that's one of the reasons why I developed Design Journal. Number two, even if it's difficult, I want you to keep going without ditching. Work on it a little bit every day instead of just like fall off the face of the planet for 3 months, which I know is not always possible. Things happen, life happens. I am aware. But if you're able to keep going, okay? The thing is I have a lot of students who come in and work on the project for a couple months and they do the beginning steps and then they don't finish. Starting a project is so much easier than anything else, and that applies to literally every industry, everything. Okay? And so, when I say if your first one sucks, you're right on track, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. I want you to finish it. I want you to slog through and finish it. Okay. Uh, and you're going to learn so much about yourself. Uh, don't take the time off. Keep working through it. Even if it's just one new thing a day, keep working on it. Okay. How long is preferable? I mean, I'm not talking about these 2-week turnaround fast fashion sort of things. A lot of companies, they do like 4 seasons. So try one, like if you're going full speed, you could do, if you're trying to mimic a fashion school program, beginners spend 7 to 8 weeks on one project. Okay? 7 to 8 weeks on one project for, design level 1, level 2. And then when you get to level 3, level 4, you're expected to do a design project in 5 days. And that is from concept to finished boards. Okay? In a real world setting, then you would move on to product development, getting your samples made. But also in the real world, you would not have that much time. Okay, so in a school setting, you go from 7 to 8 weeks to 5 weeks, And so, well, you got to start somewhere. So try like one collection in a season. So 4 collections a year. And then try for 8 weeks for one collection. Concept to find a board. And then get faster and get faster. Okay? None of this stuff happens overnight. And I think that's, people are always so surprised by that. I have a lot of people who come into my Patreon saying, I'm going to do this Patreon project and the final result, I'm going to go to market with it. That's the worst idea I ever heard. I love you. That's the worst idea I ever heard because your first product generally is not cute. Okay. Even if you're developing one product and it's more about product development than design, you want to do several iterations of product testing before you go to market. If you're doing any kind of collection, you want to have a lot of design experience under your belt before you take something to market. Do not design the first thing that comes out of your butt, put it out to market, and then wonder why nobody wants it. Don't make an appointment with me and ask me like, oh, Zoe, how do you design something other people want to buy when all you did is take your first collection you ever designed and then take it to market? That's really not how learning anything works, including fashion and including anything out there. Okay. 5 days for ready-made samples. What are you talking about? Like, I'm not talking about product development. I'm talking about the design cycle. So I don't know what you mean by 5 days to ready-made samples. Okay. So those are the two biggies, the two big trends that I've seen people kind of losing track, losing focus, losing interest. Watch out for those pitfalls. All right. Oh, I had a whole list of things I wanted to talk to y'all about. Hold on. Oh, do y'all remember my sketchbook, Zoe Hong X Sketched? And, I was doing projects in these. They have flats templates, they have fashion figure templates. I'm trying to find a blank page, but I'm always drawing in this. So I don't. There we go. There's one. This one is just torsos. If you wanted to do some close ups. And I mean, obviously, they're drawn lightly so that you can see and draw your own. And this is on stone paper so that it takes marker really well. This is marker. And there's no bleeding. Like I did this swatch with like a lot of marker to show that this paper, see, this is one sheet. Okay. One sheet. There's no bleeding. Okay. So this is special stone paper for marker with my fashion templates and my flat templates to help you design stuff. And so I've been selling these, I'm extremely thoughtful about my merch. I have the book, I have the sketchbook, I have my mugs, my practice not magic mugs. You can find all these on my website, zoehong.com. But this one, I have a special discount code for 35% off until Christmas Day. So just use discount code Zoe35 and you'll get 35% off on one of these bad boys. And I am going to post a link to the sketchbook in the chat, and the discount code is Zoe35. Okay. And that's 35% off its list price. Right. And then what's the other thing I want to talk about? Oh, yeah. So I'm on Blue Sky and I'm on Threads, and I'm not really good at short form content, but if you want to follow me, I'm over there. Okay. So go find me. I'm at Zoe Hong everywhere. This is my new favorite book. Okay. It's all about Black contributions in fashion. And I'm going to start a new video series on the channel all about Black contributions in fashion, discussing Black stylists, Black fashion designers, models, the whole shebang. Okay. 100 years. It's the subtitle is 100 Years of Style, Influence, and Culture. I bought this when I was in LA last week, a couple weeks ago. I don't know. What is time? Time has no meaning. Okay. So I'm going to be doing that. And the thing is, I posted about that, and then one of my Instagram pals, she reminded me that the Met Gala's theme this year is all about, listen, I don't want to misquote this, so let me just Google it really quick. Met Gala theme 2025 is, the title is Superfine, tailoring Black style. And she's like, hey, like, your idea is in line with the Met Gala. And so, yeah, I'll be doing them in installments on my YouTube channel. And then you can get ready to critique and be like, oh, they're referencing this and they're referencing that from this famous Black fashion designer, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Okay. So I'm really excited because, we really overall do not get enough knowledge about minority groups' contributions to fashion. And yeah, we need to see it. We need to see it. All right. And then, whew, what am I? Oh, right. I'm going to Paris in January and I'm going to Brussels in February. So let me know in the comments if you want to do a meetup. What I want to do, I do not want to sit in a coffee shop and talk. I've done that. It's very nice. But what I really want to do is to take advantage of being in Paris and in Brussels. And I want to do a museum field trip with you. I want to meet with you in front of a museum. I've already looked up some really cool museums and fashion exhibits that are happening during my travel dates. And I want to walk the museum with you and we could chit chat about the exhibit and maybe hear about my rants or raves about particular pieces in the exhibit. Because every time I go to the museum with my friends, something pisses me off and I go off for a minute. And then usually at some point, I almost get kicked out of the museum. Like, I've never been kicked out of a museum, but I have had many security guards look at me very sternly in museums. And they'll say things like, ma'am, you're getting too close to the exhibit. Like, I always get busted. But I've never been kicked out yet, but it's always a good time because I get super excited about these things. And I think it'd be really fun to do it with you. So let me know if you're interested in doing a museum field trip with me in Paris and or Brussels. Because I think I'm giving a lecture in Brussels. And then I'm going to Premiere Vision in Paris, or outside Paris, over by the airport. So I can walk the trade show and shoot video footage of Premiere Vision. So if you ever wanted to walk Premiere Vision with me and find out, watch me touch pretty fabrics and talk to fabric vendors, Your day has come. I'm very excited. I've been to a lot of different trade shows, but I've never been to Premiere Vision, which is, I believe, the largest one for sourcing in the fashion industry. So I'm really excited about that. So I'm going to be doing that. And then, listen, this is all I'm going to say about the matter because I don't know anything more than that. In June, I'm going to go down to LA to look for apartments. My husband and I, we have been contemplating a move to LA, and we were doing a kind of like our year-long calendar, broad strokes calendar. We're like, okay, let's go to LA in June to look for apartments. Okay. Just that's the stuff. All right. So as I'm winding down, we have about 15 minutes for random questions. So throw them in the chat. Number one, what kind of magazine/books do you think is good for inspiration for collections? I mean, I haven't really looked at magazines in a long time. Like, I picked up a couple when I was in Japan just because I'm in Japan and I wanted to see what they had. I just like going to bookstores and just looking at stuff. Okay? And if I'm feeling inspired by something in a season, I pick up a book or two about that thing. When I did my very first Watch Me Design a Fashion Collection series, I was inspired by Rocks and Gems because I was in Boston and I had gone to the Museum of Natural History with my girlfriends, and I was really inspired by their mineral exhibit. And so I picked up the Smithsonian book of Rocks and Gems, and that was one of the major influences for that collection. And so when you think of something that you find inspiring, I would recommend you pick up a book. Something I do also is going to the bargain bin of bookstores and looking around to see if there's anything cool. This is how I discovered one of my favorite books of all time, Extraordinary Chickens. And so it's not really about a book that I reference over and over and over again. It's about, you know, just kind of living life and thinking about things. And I have a whole list of inspiration, like how to get inspiration in the book also. And kind of researching that further through books and magazines, and not necessarily like, you should just be looking at books and magazines that cover subjects you enjoy anyway. And I always encourage people to, I mean, yes, also go look at fashion books, fashion museum exhibits, all of that. But I also encourage people to look at things that have nothing to do with fashion to see what clicks for you. How deal with perfectionism? Perfectionism is stupid. I say that often. It's a hashtag, and I have a whole playlist on it. And it is like a mental illness. I'm not going to call it like an official mental illness, but it's like ingrained in our brains that we have to shake out. It's like stuck in there real good. And repeat after me. Perfectionism impedes progress. Okay. Anytime you start spiraling and nitpicking and all this stuff, repeat after me. Perfectionism impedes or stops or delays progress, because you're so stuck on this little itty bitty thing that actually doesn't mean anything in the long run. And you're not finishing the project. You're not finishing so you can look at your mistakes and move forward. You're not finishing so that you're not like having the good feeling of accomplishment and being able to see the good that you did, and in return feel good about your work and good enough to move on to the next thing. Like, all these things are necessary for a healthy creative cycle. And if you're a perfectionist and you're nitpicking on this thing, forget it. So I was going over this because I'm wrapping up the how to draw flats class on my Patreon, and I've finished filming and recording all the end of year videos. And in one of the videos, I was talking about, when you get into Adobe Illustrator, and because it's a vector format, you could blow it up and blow it up and blow it up, and still everything looks really crisp and clear. You don't get blurry until you've blown it up to like 30,000x. Okay. And we were doing these like little rivets and these little tiny rhinestones and how to turn them into symbols, and little tiny zipper heads to turn them into symbols so you can just click and drag them onto your flats. And I'm like, listen, and I'm like making bar tacks, I'm making buttonholes, all that kind of thing, right? Here's the thing is there is a limit. Like, yes, of course, you should make them as nice as possible. Get in there, zoom in, get those zigzags looking great. Okay, use the zigzag tool, get them looking great. But there is a point where you cannot be obsessed. Just, you have to stop. And I'm like, you have to get to a certain point where you pull back all the way and look at it life size. And if you need to, print it out at the size you're going to print your flats at, and be like, this is what the buttonhole is going to look like. And you might discover it looks like crap with all the detail you put in it, because nobody sees that when an actual buttonhole is about this big, and on your flat it's going to be this big. Okay. And so you have to learn how to pull back and look at the broad picture also. So while you're working on these little, and trust me, I love all that little tiny detail, perfect rhinestones, perfect, little beading, so, but sometimes you have to be like, put it at arm's length. This is something that also applies when I teach how to do prints. FYI, I have a whole section in my book on how to render textures and different fabrics, and I have a section in there on how to render prints. And one of the first steps is to pin the fabric on a wall and step back 8 feet, because when you're looking at a fabric like this, nobody else is looking at it like that. Okay, when you're drawing your figures that are this big, you're not going to see those itty bitty tiny details. Okay. So you need to push back from your fabric to get the overall view of what you're going to see and what you need to render. And you sometimes need to push back, see the big picture, see what needs to get done, what needs to get done, what would be nice if you got done. And if you didn't do this thing, no one would freaking care. And everyone, particularly Hollywood loves to hype up these these absolutely crazy stories about this one editor, this one director that went on a rampage for this one thing and blah, blah, blah. They love to have, and they spent $3 million on their budget on this little thing that literally nobody knew about until it became trivia. I always roll my eyes so hard at those stories. You wasted $3 million for what? Do you know how many people you could feed with $3 million? You know how many people you could pay for their cancer treatments with $3 million? And you're so far up your own ass that you had to spend $3 million on a detail that literally nobody noticed until you had to tell them? No. Perfectionism is a lot of ego. It's a lot of ego, because a lot of the time only you are going to know that you agonized over a particular detail until you were crying blood. Okay. And it's not healthy. It's really not healthy. So once you start getting in your juices about stuff, just put the pencil down. Okay. Put the pencil down. Go have some coffee or something more soothing like tea. Okay. And just like, okay, let's lay out the project. Let's look at a big picture. What's going on? Let's reprioritize what we need to do to get these things done. Okay. All right. Next question. What got you into fashion and teaching about fashion? I've wanted to do fashion since I was a little girl. And the thing is, I also tutored ever since I was a little girl. Like, even starting in high school, I was tutoring Korean kids, like new Korean kids, new to the country, they needed help in their English classes. Here's a super common story of, I think, a lot of Asian immigrants, but definitely Korean immigrants, is if they had any schooling in Korea before they came to the States, like they're really good at math and things that do not require extensive language skills to learn them. They're good at drawing, they're good at math. Um, and then they flunk English the first year. This happens a lot. So then they would tutor someone like me who is bilingual and can get them up to speed. And so I've been tutoring since I was a kid. I ran the peer tutoring department when I was in fashion school for liberal arts. I used to, I did that. And then I did private tutoring on the side because it paid a lot more than any fashion job ever could. Like I even got an internship that paid, and it paid $8 an hour. And then on the side, I was tutoring English for $100 an hour. And that's how I could afford fashion school. So I was using like financial aid work study money to, teach tutoring on campus. I was doing private tutoring, and then to get industry experience, I was working $8 an hour at an internship, which I learned a lot, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't buying my fabrics for my senior show on $8 an hour. Let me tell you, anyone who finished fashion school will tell you, okay? So I've always been teaching, and I think it's like naturally when you are the eldest daughter, um, you just kind of either are born bossy or just naturally become bossy over time. I have two siblings. I have two younger siblings. And then growing up, I also had two step siblings. So we were kind of a full house for a while. So yeah. And then so when I was working in the industry and they asked me to teach, I was like, okay, I'm going to teach one class this first semester, see how it goes. I fell in love immediately. Like I was so into it. I was so into it. And some of that was because that first class was so great. They were such a great group. And listen, every teacher, you've had those classes, and I think also as a student, you've had those classes where you can tell the chemistry of the group like really gels together, and you are just on fire. Like you just have this vibe. And when you're doing lecture and Q&A and we're talking, or when you're doing critique, like there's just like this vibe where you're more comfortable with one another. You're able to make jokes, and so critique goes well because you're not all stiff and formal and stuff. Like that first class was a really fantastic class. So yeah. And then after that, they were like, so how was teaching? Can we sign you up for more classes next semester? And I was like, load it up. I love it. So how to make different silhouettes. Read my book. Um, Also uh watch me design a fashion collection series. It's all about taking shapes from your inspiration images and translating them into silhouettes. Okay. Thoughts on Vogue's creative trajectory impact? Do you think they'll be able to evolve with the times? My area of expertise is not journalism or marketing, which is more their thing. I don't know. They haven't been doing anything that appeals to me in particular, but I am not their customer. Their customer are people who are interested enough in fashion to read about it and to follow trends and find out what all the shows are. And that's not me. I use Vogue Runway because I like to keep up with like kind of loosely keep up with the shows to continue being a good teacher. Like a good teacher should know what the trends are, what's going on where, you know, basic big fashion news like Louise Trotter, what's his face, Blazy over at Chanel, like big news like that. But it's not like I am reading all the news and I don't really care about, what Kim Kardashian wore where and what the street. Well, sometimes I do like looking at street style because I really do believe that you need to be looking at what people are actually wearing. But like what people wear to fashion shows is not exactly what people are wearing in real life. So I like street fashion and not event fashion always. Of course, the Met Gala is always fun, but like there needs to be a balance. And so I do like street fashion. And that's kind of why things like fruits was so popular because The dude who started Fruits, he was literally just photographing kids he saw on the street, just looking fly. That's it. It wasn't just like manicured photo shoots. It was like, oh, look at that kid. Like, they look amazing. And that's what made it so fresh. And so I do like to look at street style. I wish they would do more like straight up street style and not just here's what this celebrity wore at this event or here's what the fashion editors are wearing. Like, fashion editors don't dress like other people. Like, especially when they go to events, they have like a certain expectation. Like, people have a certain expectation of how they should dress. And, it gets convoluted. Like, for example, when you hear about Allure's beauty winners of the year, and you hear like, you're like, excuse me, I tried that product and it is utter trash. Ad dollars are behind a lot of those decisions. So that's why street style is always a little bit more real. So I think you need to be getting your news sources from a variety of sources so that you have a better picture. You don't have this like weird angled lens of how the fashion industry views fashion, but also how people are wearing clothes. Yeah. I just looked up the Extraordinary Chickens book and the cover is amazing. It is. The inside is also amazing. And it was at the bargain bin of my local Barnes and Noble, which was next to a movie theater. And my husband and I were killing time before the movie started. And he was over looking at motorcycle magazines. And I was just looking through the bargain bin books and I found Extraordinary Chickens. Amazing. I recently started looking for a job. I only have a year and a half of experience as an assistant. I don't know if I should look for a job as a junior designer or continue as an assistant. Look for everything. Everybody has a different way of categorizing job titles. What job description goes with what title. Every company is a little bit different on that. So look for responsibilities, prerequisites, responsibilities, compensation, and what you're going for, not necessarily job title. And when you look at the requirements or, things you need to know to get the job, look at that list. If you have everything on that list, you are overqualified. You should be aiming for, okay, my husband and I, he's hired a lot of people in his industry over the years, and we've argued about this. He thinks 60% is good enough to apply for the job. I say 75, but I am a woman working in a woman's body with, preconceived notions about women's abilities in the workplace. So he goes 60, I go 75. If you have at least 75% of the requirements listed for the job, I say apply. And I do have videos on how to look for jobs. My job site Threaded got taken down because nobody was using it, but the advice I give in those videos is still valid. Okay. So I'm new to fashion and I see fashion as my future. Any advice for someone who is teaching themselves everything from the ground up? I'm actually trying to draft a coat pattern now. Okay. So I do have a how to become a fashion designer video. And it kind of goes over the three main paths of like going to fashion school, like working as a freelancer, like it goes over the basic patterns. So there's that. At some point, and you're going to naturally get to this point, and you're going to know that you kind of have to narrow down your study so that you can study more effectively. In the beginning, most people, they don't know exactly what niche they want to get into. They might think they do, but people change their minds. When I was starting out as thinking about going to fashion school, all the way through fashion school, did I ever think that I was going to be so obsessed with outerwear? No. And I grew up in Alaska. And we all lived in like Columbia jackets, the North Face jackets, uh I was I was telling my friend in Palm Springs last week about how when I was growing up, I would see all these commercials on TV for David Green Master Furrier. And they were all very soft focused and dramatic. And they're all, these 80s ladies with like the big blonde hair and these huge chinchilla and mink coats. And everything was like soft jazz. And it was like borderline softcore porn. And I was like telling them about these commercials. So yeah, like my exposure to outerwear were these ridiculous coat commercials and then just like all the North Face jackets everyone wore to school. And so I just didn't really know that outerwear could be so fun and interesting until I started working in outerwear and I was like, this is my jam. And if I were to start a brand right now, it would be outerwear. It would absolutely be outerwear. But did I think I would get here? No. Not 30 years ago, not 25 years ago. Yeah, maybe like 25 years ago. Yeah. But anyway, do broad stroke study on design a few projects, learn basic sketching. Designers do not need to know beautiful illustration, but they need to understand how to get their point across to other people by learning how to draw clothes on bodies. That's why I'm always selling fashion templates for designers. I have the templates in this book that's on sale right now. I also have just like downloadable templates in my store and just learn how to draw clothes on those templates. And if you're an illustrator, though, you should be making your own figures. But for designers, it doesn't matter. Just get some bodies and start playing around. And you'll naturally gravitate towards some categories of clothes more than others. And as you kind of filter out stuff that is of less interest to you, start focusing on that. You're working on patterning a coat. Maybe that's something that you get into because like people are known for things. Everybody assumes that you go into fashion and you have to know how to do whole outfits. And when you're a beginning designer and you're presenting collections, yeah, you should have whole outfits. But it's also perfectly fine to have like portfolio projects where it's just swimwear, portfolio projects where it's just bras and panties, portfolio projects where it's just coats or just jeans because you have learned so much about denim, okay? And kind of pursue those areas. Greetings from Germany. Greetings to Germany. How cold is it over there right now? I was there a couple of years ago in mid-October when my girlfriend was looking at master's programs and we were in Berlin and it was really cold for a couple of California girls. And why is there a doner kebab place on every street corner in Berlin? I was like, wait, what? What? Are we in Germany? But here's the thing I love most about Germany is I picked up this shampoo in Germany that I am now obsessed with and I order online. I pay that stupid, well, I buy in bulk, but I pay for that. I'm gonna look for it when I'm in Paris because obviously I know Germany and France are not the same, but neighboring countries usually have like exported products of close countries. So I'm gonna see if I can. It's good shampoo. It's a bar. It's a shampoo soap bar. So I travel with it. I think I'm having a pretty good hair day. Anyway, let's see. Narrow down, like you mentioned, a friend who specialized in silks. Okay, Carolina, you are writing these like very weird cut apart comments. Can you just like write all your thoughts in one? Because I don't know what you're referencing. Like I'm talking so fast, I have no idea what you're referencing right now. Narrow down, like you mentioned, a friend who specialized. Yeah, well, I'm the one who specialized in silks. Like I learned a lot about silks working in women's contemporary. If you watched my interview with Melissa Calamia, her whole work background is on cut and sew knits, and that means intimates, that means socks, and that means swimwear. Okay, and that is where her experience comes from. So she knows those fabrics. Oh, also athleisure. like leggings, sports bras, that sort of thing. And that's where her experience comes from. That's her knowledge of fabrics. That's her knowledge of construction, and how knowledge of fabric and construction aid in design and vice versa. And so that is her area of expertise. And as she moves through her career and becomes more knowledgeable in those areas, she's kind of permanently moved into that space. Like at the very beginning of your career, you may think in broad strokes like, I like fancy evening wear. I like casual, like I want to build a better athleisure brand. You could do like more generic with multiple categories, but as you float through and work, you're going to gravitate towards certain things. Do your books sell in North Africa? Okay, we went over this in the beginning. It really depends on uh what website you're buying from and what their shipping policies are, so you have to look into that. But if you're worried about things getting lost in the mail, you can also get the ebook version. Like both the book and design journal come in the ebook versions. Do you think people need to get into a fashion school to start a successful brand? No. You do need to educate yourself somehow. And so if fashion school is going to be the easiest way to get yourself some education, so be it. If you could do it through outside workshops or self-study, you need to ask yourself how much discipline you have. Okay, some people do not have the self motivation. They need the external motivation of school and deadlines in order to pursue their studies. Some people can function without. Happy holiday from New York. It's cold here. I've been to New York the last week of December. So I had a girl I used to have a girlfriend who lived in Boston. And so I went to New York for a few days because I love New York. And then I took the train to Boston to see her. And it was the last week of the year a few years ago. And yeah, I did take my vintage long ankle length fur. It's about as old as I am. It's vintage. Don't come at me. And yeah, that was what was appropriate. That was the only way to stay warm. Okay. All right. So we're at a 9:15 and quarter past an hour. So I'm gonna wrap things up. Okay, we have one last question, and that's it. This question from Peachy is gonna be the last question before I wrap things up. Should people try fashion designing first to see if fashion is meant for them? If not, do you believe people could fall in love with fashion? If I wrote that right. You can try it, but here's the thing is fashion design is too difficult to pursue if you don't love it. Like, even if you love it, you may find that it is too discouraging, too terrible, too hard, all these things, too fast paced, too demanding. And so you have to have a love for it to begin with. But there's nothing wrong with trying it first to decide whether or not you're in love with it. Like, if you have kind of like a general interest, I mean, you're watching my channel, first of all, like, yeah, try it. I'm setting my Patreon archives at $7 a month. Join my class, take the fashion design class. Like, see whether you like it or not. Why not? It'll take you nothing but time and some money, a little bit of money for classes, some fabric, that sort of thing. It's not like you need that much equipment until you start making clothes. So try it out. Why not? Oh, something I forgot to mention about my Patreon. I'm also bundling my classes for sale. So if you don't want to do the archive content and, have a monthly subscription, because I know some people really do not like a monthly subscription, I also have the classes bundled for sale. Okay, just go to my Patreon. Here, I'll show you. Hold on. Where is my Patreon? Bum ba da bum. Where are my collections? No. This is my Patreon shop. Okay. I have a drawing clothes course. I have a color for fashion course, I have a figure drawing course, and I have a fashion design course. When I finish my drawing flats class, I will also put it as a course on this page. So you can just buy the courses and then just have access to them, ask me questions. That's it. Instead of doing the archive, the whole monthly subscription thing, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So that is it for questions. Peachy was the last cutoff question. Thank you so much for joining me today. For all the links I talked about, you can go to the video description of this live stream, or you can just go to zoehong.com and click on all those links. Don't forget discount code Zoe, ZOE 35 for 35% off my fashion figure templates, marker paper, sketchbook up until Christmas Day. And also remember that my books also come in ebook format for those of you worried about shipping. Okay, those have been my biggest questions this season. Although I'm not complaining because any interest in my book is good. I'm just saying I would like to reiterate that you can also get the ebook version. And if you order them from my publisher, rockynook.com, then they'll send you both the Kindle copy, the Kindle format, and the PDF. Okay. So that's that. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a beautiful end of the year. I hope you have an amazing New Year celebration. New Year is personally my favorite holiday, so I love it. And maybe I'll see you in France in January. Okay. So, bye.